Hi, this is Naomi with Sword and Steel, and today's video is going to be on contrast paint Aethermatic Blue and what you can do with it, how it reacts when you put it over various primers, and what I normally use it for. Contrast paints work over light primers. They are transparent paint, and the brighter the undercoat, the brighter the contrast paint over top it. Aethermatic Blue is one of the much more transparent paints of the contrast paint range, with the primer underneath playing a larger role in the color than some of the other contrast paints. Because this paint has so much flow improver in it, and it's so transparent, it's easy to put too much paint on the model. As if you are accustomed to the other contrast paints, you are going to expect a more vibrant color. But for this one, forget what the other contrast paints do and focus solely on what you want the model to look like when it is dry. Everywhere this pools, there will dry a bigger pool because of its viscosity. So I would suggest regularly emptying your brush out onto a paper towel and pulling that excess paint out of the crevices as you go, or just start a little bit less on your brush. You don't want to wait if you're painting an entire model like I was until the very end to pull the pooling away, because it will already have started to dry in places. And make certain to leave it to dry completely before you dare to touch it again, or it will leave random unwelcome dark spots with a weird pale spot in the center. I do know this from experience, and I've learned my lesson, and I'd like you to avoid it, because you can fix it, but it's just easier not to do it in the first place. Once these two models are dry, you will see that the colder gray sear primer ends in a more blue-toned miniature than the warmer Wraithbone. This one would also be really nice over just a blue if you wanted it to mildly turn more turquoise. Particularly if you wanted it mildly more turquoise in the crevices. One thing about this that would be different to some of the contrast paints is that it will be more vibrant in the crevices instead of more dark if you're putting it over a different color. So just be careful about how you apply it over other colors, because it's not going to be darker in the crevices, it's going to be more vibrant. I like to use other contrast paints to darken Aethermatic Blue shadows if I do want to do that instead. For example, in the black coach that I did, to make shadows, I actually used in big mix. I used 4 paints all at the same time, 4 contrast paints actually. If I remember correctly, it was Talisar Blue, Shaiish Purple, Apothecary White, and probably Aethermatic Blue as well, to make a shadow-ish change to the Aethermatic Blue's original color, because just adding more Aethermatic Blue isn't going to really make a shadow more, it's just going to bring out the Aethermatic Blue color. So if you want to shadow Aethermatic Blue, you probably want to use something else. Now, I did say it was a big mess of Talisar Blue, Shaiish Purple, and Apothecary White. Well, I think at this point, you could probably just use the brand new Celestium Blue, because that turns out to be a fairly similar color to what I created. Maybe with a touch more purple, scoot in one of the purples a little bit. But yeah, that color actually turns out to be pretty close to what I created in the black coach video, which I shall add to the description if you wanted to check out exactly what I did to that coach. Now, again, because of how thin this Aethermatic Blue is, when applied over a silver metal like this one here, it makes very little difference at first, until I add a fairly excessive amount of paint, which one has to do rather carefully, and even then it only tints the metal mildly, so it definitely dulls the metal's shine down. I like how it turned out. It's like old metal. I bet if I actually just covered it entirely with Aethermatic Blue rather than airbrushed it on, it'd probably give a nice nihilic oxide sort of look, a verdigris, a faint verdigris possibly. I feel like the Verdigris itself is nicer, but if you wanted a more subtle look, you could possibly use Aethermatic Blue instead. Now, I did something a bit different with the black coat, but for the most part, the Night Hunt army that I have is entirely done in a single layer of Aethermatic Blue, and it does make for very nice ghostly figures. Now, for this one, I found to fix any pooling mistakes for Aethermatic Blue, like if I just wanted to use Aethermatic Blue and I wasn't going to be adding any more colors to it, and I wanted to fix any pooling mistakes, I simply use the primer, whichever primer I had. So Greyseer and Wraithbone are common sprays, but they also have a base or a layer, one or the other, regular acrylic paint that comes in a little bottle. So you can grab that. I'd always suggest grabbing, if you're going to be priming with Greyseer or Wraithbone, grab the little bottle as well for fixing mistakes. For other contrast paints, all you have to do to fix the mistake is just cover up your mistake with Wraithbone or Greyseer, whichever one you happen to use, and then put the contrast paint over top again. For Aethermatic Blue, I don't think you need to do that at all. All you have to do is mix your primer in with Aethermatic Blue directly and then apply that over. Because Aethermatic Blue is so thin, the strength of it drying is not uniform across the model. You may need to do several different mixes. So finding one single color that works like the highlight for Aethermatic Blue is not as easy, so I just make it in my palette, mixing the original primer color directly with Aethermatic Blue and then highlighting that way, or fixing mistakes that way. It just seems a lot more efficient than trying to find a color that matches something that is actually several colors all at the same time. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you had any questions about how to use Aethermatic Blue that I didn't go over in the video, make certain to comment below if you had any questions about any of the contrast paints or, paints in general. If I didn't mention the silver paint that I used over the for which I put Aethermatic Blue over, which didn't really do much, I have to say, was Lead Belcher Spray with Chrome from Vallejo Metal Color over top. Alright, that's it for me. Thanks, bye! Do you remember this guy? I faced this guy. I faced him all by myself. Would you like to see the video on that? I'll put it in this description. When I did a AOS solo mission and I faced against this fellow. He's so angry at me for missing all those rolls. He's done all in contrast.